So if you heard me talking recently in particular on the July the 27th about the true North Node going into Aquarius and how we were starting the transition of the North Node in Pisces going into the sign of Aquarius. Today, Tuesday, the 18th of August, 2026 is the day when the mean North Node catches up. And from here on in, the North Node, whether we're recording it as the true or the mean, and it's semantics. It depends on, whether you're looking at the real time position or the average position. But we really are truly now into a nodal position across the signs of Aquarius and Leo. Now, that might sound like gobbledygook. And actually, what I propose to do in this episode is to talk about the North Node, like what it is in a nutshell. Why this is special, what's happened previously when the North Node has gone into Aquarius. It has a very, very distinct flavor, as you'll find out. Also going to talk about two of the biggest aspects that are coming up during this nodal pattern, because this is taking us on an 18-month journey. This is taking us until March 2028. And so this is a really big chapter in our lives as individuals and also as humans. And so that's why I'm spending so much time looking at this. Before I do get going, though, I do just want to pay some attention to Tuesday, the 18th of August. So if you are here just for the heads up on Tuesday, the 18th, this is what I'm going to start with. So apart from the North Node going into Aquarius, which I'll be talking about in just a sec, we've also got the moon in a square to Pluto. We've got the moon going into a trine with Mars. We've also got the moon going into a square with Jupiter, and obviously the North Node going into Aquarius. Now, two of these are very big aspects. And in actual fact, both of these planets are going to be really important as the North Node goes into Aquarius and stays in Aquarius, goes through its whole journey in Aquarius. And that would be Jupiter in Leo and also Pluto in Aquarius. The moon here in being in a square to both of them is really interesting because the nodes are going to be playing with this. When we're talking about North Node, it's now just into the sign of Aquarius. There's always a South Node, and the South Node is always opposite. And so that's in Leo. And because Pluto and Jupiter are fairly slow moving, Jupiter's slow, but Pluto is really slow. It's going to take him another 17 years to go through the sign of Aquarius. When the South Node meets with Jupiter and also when the North Node meets with Pluto, these are going to bring in a really rare event, not just yet. However, I will be talking about those a little bit later on in today's episode. So it's interesting that as the nodes go into Aquarius, that both Jupiter and Pluto are in a square to the moon. And this is going to bring up some of the tension that we'll be talking about today. So the moon in a square to Pluto, I think, shows where we have a need to emotionally understand how we can control things in our life that we can't control. It's like a battle of control. We are aware of what is controlling us, and yet we are wanting to reclaim our own sense of emotional equilibrium. Like, how do we come back into our own sense of who we are? And how do we know who we are without other people's authority over us? So this is quite a big one. And I always think that the moon, when it's working with Pluto, it's showing us the lengths we will go to manipulate things or to avoid being manipulated. And so, yeah, manipulation, emotional manipulation is a real theme today. Also, with the moon in a square to Jupiter, that can really inflame things. And so your emotions can become suddenly really fiery. Things can suddenly, it's like the emotional tempo is suddenly turned up, like the volume of it is like really amplified. So whatever emotions you're feeling, it's gonna go deep. And so to me, this is quite a volatile day. This is a day when we could feel very triggered to take action on something. And what's also interesting as well is that Mars, the planet of action, is working beautifully with the emotions. So if we do feel very emotional about something, we are likely to take action there and then. So it could be quite a tricky day. However, the great thing with the moon is that the moon moves very fast. And by the end of the day, we'll be largely out of that energy. So that's good. Anyway, let me move on now specifically to, I want to devote the rest of this to the North Node in Aquarius. So let's look at what it means. In this part, I'm going to be looking at what the North Node is in a nutshell, what has happened in previous times when the North Node has gone through Aquarius, what the cycle and polarity of the nodes represents and why it's important, specifically how it's going to work out for us with the North Node in Aquarius and the South in Leo. And then I want to pay a little bit of attention to a few other things. So the rulers of Aquarius and Leo, which would be Saturn, Uranus, and the Sun, they're going to take on a lot more authority, I would say, over the next 18 months. And so understanding where those three are in your chart, and also understanding where those three are transiting in your chart. If you understand what that means, you'll be nodding and go, yeah, I can see that. So we're talking a little bit about that. The Sabian symbols for Aquarius 30 and Leo 30. And yeah, as we come to the end of this, I'll be signposting that there is part 2, which will be the sign by sign forecasts, which I'm sure you're looking forward to, because they're the favorite things, they're the things that everyone loves. So what are the nodes in a nutshell? Like, most of us know that there is a North Node, but not everyone knows there's a South Node. And so this is a little bit of astronomy and observation. And so, first of all, they're not actual planets, they're points. And so they are intersectional points. It's a calculation, and it's a calculation based on the orbit of Earth around the Sun as it's recorded across the ecliptic plane. That's what it's called. Versus the lunar orbit plane. And so the moon is always orbiting Earth, and you'll see there's like 5.1 or 5.2 angle of difference between the lunar orbit plane and the ecliptic plane. And so where these two planes intersect, that's where you get the South Node and the North Node, according to which direction it's going in. So for instance, the North Node, which by the way is known as Rahu, if you're looking from a more Indian perspective, the North Node is known as the ascending node, because it's where the moon crosses the ecliptic when it's traveling from south to north. And you can see like the North Node here is traveling in a northerly direction. And then the South Node is known as the descending node, also known as Ketu in, again, in Indian astrology. And this is where the moon is crossing over the ecliptic on the orbital plane, and it's going in a southerly direction from the north. And so they are intersectional points, but they're also inferring a direction. So the South Node is moving southward across the lunar orbit plane, and the North Node is moving in a northerly direction. So they are intersectional points, but they are moving. And that's what I think is important, because movement suggests change. This isn't a static point. These are points that are gradually moving and gradually showing direction. And, when we use them, we're always using them together. They're always showing up as in opposition in our birth charts. I always think astro.com is brilliant. There's always lots of articles about the North Node or the ascending node. So check it out. They're really, really worth learning about. Because they are intersectional and they're points and they're just a calculation, it's almost like a theory, as opposed to a planet that we can track and see. And there's the idea that they're solid, and there's the idea that there's these lovely mythological stories about them. And I love that, because those stories about the planets play out. But the nodes are kind of mysterious, and so they're related to karma. In fact, if we have a look, the North Node, it's standing for future or future direction. I was talking about that movement in which a personal situation should develop. Its direction may be similar to the rest of the chart, or it might suggest new, unfamiliar territory. So the North Node is always pushing us to see something new, to develop something. It might also show us what like the journey of our lifetime, especially our personal North Node in our birth chart. It's showing us the direction our life is meant to be going in. And it also shows us the things that we struggle with again and again and again. You know how wherever you go, there you are. Have you ever noticed that? Even if you've moved from one town or one country to another country, the same situations crop up again and again. You meet the same kind of people. You have the same kind of difficulty. Some people call that karma or a repeating pattern. I think the North Node often shows what's going on. It talks about the patterns that we struggle with. Now, the South Node is showing what we've already achieved. So it's associated with the past, and it can show, if you believe in karma, that is, it shows some of the karmic things we might have brought over from past lives or from early childhood. It's like that whole influence of the past and how it's playing into our life. Now, it can also show the gifts that we've accumulated from our good karma, hopefully. It shows the things that we've really learned and got very competent with, but it can also show where we might be resting on our laurels because we're already good at that. You know, the South Node is what we've done and dusted. And so it often shows us the things that we need to let go of because we're in a comfort zone. And of course, if we're in a comfort zone, are we actually going to grow? Are we going to grow at all? So the two of them are really, really important. You know, they're showing us what we've done and can let go of, and what we haven't done or completed, but we need to orient ourselves to. Now, again, they are the North and South Node in our life, but where they are currently, i.e. the North Node has just gone into Aquarius and the South Node has just gone into Leo, that's talking about the collective karma of humanity. Like, what do we need to let go of, and what are we about to learn, and what might we be struggling whilst we're learning it? And so another way of understanding how the North Node in Aquarius is going to help us is to understand what's happened in the past. And here we are. So I've got four different episodes, or I guess editions of when the North Node went into Aquarius, like when were the last times? And so we've got one here from 1952 to 1953. It's like 18 months from start to finish. And during that time, there was stuff going on with the Cold War, which was already happening. Korean War, the North Korean invasion, DNA was discovered, television got bigger. It was already around. I've got loads of notes written here. It was during this time, between 1952 and 1953, TV went coast to coast. Also, we had the beginning of the European Union. Maybe I shouldn't call it the Union because I don't know if it was called that, but 6 nations within Europe, and they are as follows: France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. They got together and started to work together. And so that was a new beginning. The next time we had the North Node in Aquarius, we had in 1970 to 1972, which was that time, we had Earth Day. I think for the first time, we had a lot of environmental movements going on. Email was invented. We also had the microprocessor invented as well. I think it was an Intel something or other. Women's liberation. There was a whole movement of women's liberation just like bursting forth, you know, looking for free childcare, abortion rights, equal pay. Interesting that there may be some similar themes at the moment. And then also the counterculture, the idea, like in the 1960s and beyond, there was this like, I guess, beautiful hippie movement, like the idea of one love and stuff. And things got a lot sharper during this period, you know, where there were anti-war protests, militant decentralization. And so it was coming out of the fluffy phase and starting to get a little bit politicized. Now, when we come to the next one, 1989 to 1990, there's a lot of things that I had to fact check here and check in on. Like we had the Berlin Wall coming down. The World Wide Web was proposed. We also had Mandela released from prison, and the Cold War was ending during that time. And then the previous time to where we are right now, 2007 to 2009, and this is the reference point for a lot of people who might be listening today, like the financial crash, where all the mortgages went down. Wow. So the financial crash of 2008, Facebook, although it started, I think, in 2004, it had really gathered speed and it had 100 million users. It also launched the chat functionality. Twitter, again, was started in 2006, but it was really growing, and it hit a really big milestone. We had the iPhone, we had the Bitcoin white paper, we also had Wikipedia. I think Wikipedia hit 10 million articles during this time. So I guess what we could say is in 2007 to 2009, the social media, like the commencement of social media that really began in the previous nodal position, which was during the North Node in Pisces, it was really starting to come through and pick up pace. And so there's this idea of social electronics. So there's a few themes here between all four of these. So one of them, I think, is about boundaries and like where we're in a union or not. So like what happens when walls fall and boundaries change and networks changed. If we think of like the start of the Cold War and the end of the Cold War, both taking place, during this period, that's interesting. The idea of Europe starting to work together, the World Wide Web starting to come in, and then like this level of connection that people have, women's lib, like this idea that people are starting to come together and protest together and come into a social intelligence together. That's, I think, interesting. We've also got where science can unite humanity or destroy humanity, depending on what you think. I mean, the idea of DNA being discovered and like how television had reached from coast to coast, I think is interesting. Like the processor invented emails coming in, the World Wide Web, and then, Facebook, Twitter, iPhone, Bitcoin, and Wikipedia. This is where technology and people meet, and where technology comes in to unite people, or at least put everybody in contact with each other. So I do think something like that is going to come in, and we can already see that happen with AI just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's always interesting. But then who should be in charge, I think, is another big question that comes up. Like who should have power over money, over information, over community, and how is that all going to evolve? So the financial crash is obviously quite important. I think mass television and, influencing, like the influence of social media is important, because a lot of people are or have had their worldview informed by television, and then Facebook, Twitter, like the idea of the iPhone or the cell phone, and Wikipedia, and obviously the World Wide Web. And isn't it a great thing? And of course, emails and computers, all of those things really help information to be shared, but it also creates maybe a control net of information. It looks like an option, but is it? And so I think we will be coming into things like that as we go through our own version of the North Node in Aquarius. So before I go any further and talk about the North Node in Aquarius and this cycle itself, I just want to show you the North Node cycle so you get a sense of it. It takes 18 and a half years to go from one sign all the way around. It's interesting that I've gone from Aries to Pisces in the way I'm moving my cursor, because actually the North Node appears to go backwards. So it moves from Aries to Pisces. That's where it's just been. Now it's going into Aquarius. Then it'd be after this going into Capricorn. And wherever the North Node is, the South Node is completely opposite. So right now, it's just moved from Pisces with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. and it's crossing into the North Node being in Aquarius and the South Node going into Leo. And it's going to be there for 1.55 years, so 18, just over 18 months each time. And you can see that we're actually in a whole giant node circle or cycle that started in July 2023, and will be going until 2042. And so I think it's always important to have a look at cycles and just understand how they've played out. So let's just have a look at the last few, not the last ones in Aquarius, but just the last two nodal shifts. So July 2023 was when it went into Aries, and that's when we started the last cumulative nodal cycle that's going to take us until 2042. But when it went into Aries, the North Node in Aries is very much about identity. Like Aries is a sign, it's the first sign of the zodiac. And so it's associated with our identity, our appearance. It's about our vitality, our sense of force. Aries is a very, very dynamic sign that acts first and thinks later. And so identity politics and being in charge of ourselves is huge. At the same time as that was happening, the South Node was going through Libra. So that's suggesting that we were working in a time where it was actually time to let go of so much facilitation for other people. Like Libra is all about harmony, personal harmony. So the fact that the South Node was in a place of releasing social harmony is suggesting we've done enough of that, and actually the energy needs to come back to the individual. That's kind of interesting, and you'll find out why in a second. Then in January 2025, the North Node shifted into Pisces, and that took us into, I would say, the start of an 18-month confusion or a fog. The sign of Pisces is so soulful and imaginative and creative. And so from a human perspective, I think we went into maybe a collective amnesia, a collective confusion, a moment where I think spirituality was able to be seen a lot more around the world, and religion and spirituality, I think, would have blossomed during this time. And I think it has, in particular, mindfulness and like letting go and release work, I think is really important, because, you know, Pisces really lets things go. You know, Pisces is drifting out of reality, if anything. But I think it's probably been quite difficult because the South Node has been in Virgo, suggesting that the rational mind has had too much influence over us. Like, and, you know, for the rational mind, look at the rational institutions. So I think over the last 18 months, people have started to drift out of their certainty over medicine, over politics, over news, over banking, over education, over policing, over governance. Anything that is rational and looks like it's fact-based and it's organized and everything fits neatly into a box. Of course, we know that's bullshit, because actually life can be quite messy. We're all humans. And like, how the hell do you account for every single human and allow the human to fit in? You know, one side of this favors the organization and rationalization of things, but we've actually been encouraged through the North Node to let go of our rational associations and understandings of the world. And that's interesting because now it's going into Aquarius. Now, Aquarius loves the system. It really loves the system. And it's encouraging us to look at systems from a new perspective. It's almost like Pisces in the middle was to kind of say, okay, we need to let go of all the old systems because something new is coming in. And that's what I want to talk about right now. So what are the core meanings of Aquarius and Leo? You know, these two very distinct energies. Now, we've got a lot of their energies that we can understand. We've had a hell of a lot of Aquarian energy coming into our collective notions about what it is to be human, because we had Jupiter go through it after COVID. We had Saturn go through it. And now we've got Pluto going through it. We also had the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction take place at 0 Aquarius. These conjunctions only come around every 20 years. They're seen as very special. They set the tone for the next 20 years. And so that was in Aquarius as well. So Aquarius has had a hell of a lot of energy. And one of the things that comes, and I think this energy, the Aquarian energy, really started in full as we came out of the first flush of the COVID phenomenon, in particular as the vaccines were being passed around and introduced into modern society. And so every node has a distortion. You know, when we balance too much on one way, the energy gets distorted, and then we get pulled in the opposite direction in another distortion. And so I always think with the nodes, we're really trying to find the medicine, and the medicine exists between the two meanings. And so the Aquarius distortion, I think, is our group is morally superior. I'm certainly aware of that. And I think there's been a hell of a lot of movement to support different people around the world. However, there has also been a lot of censorship that's come up in the last 5 years. Anything that doesn't or hasn't agreed with like this media idea that there are morally superior groups and there are morally inferior groups. It's interesting, isn't it? Because Aquarius is known for being a bit of a do-gooder, and Aquarius is known for being very much about the brotherhood and the sisterhood. And yet when it goes into its distortion, it doesn't say that we're equal. It says actually some people are more equal than others, which is interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, the Aquarian idea is to create a sense of equality, but there has been this idea that we have to over equalize things. And I think actually that is where the distortion starts to come in, because it starts to pull from the Leo energy. And I think this is the ground that we're standing in right now, and we're going to be exploring. And it might not appear like that to you. So if my words have offended you, I'm sorry, because that's not my idea here. I'm just trying to talk about how signs go over the top sometimes. You know, they gather momentum, and then before you know it, something that makes sense gets distorted over several times. In particular, if there are phrases that are used by the media or governments or celebrities, over time those sayings sound like they're the truth, and they get used over and over, and then they get shorthanded, and then before you know it, that shorthand just gets slightly distorted, slightly stronger. And because it's happened slowly over many years and many times, it still feels like the truth, but actually it's piggybacking off one core truth, but it's gone so far the other way. And that is happening in the other way as well. So yeah, our group is morally superior, and it's elevating the collective above the individual. And so it's not to say it's wrong, by the way, it's an observation. On the other side, we've got the Leo distortion, and we know this one because we've seen it over and over again. We've probably got relatives that practice this. There have been very distinct eras in human history that have emphasized this particular moment in time, and it's the I'm special. You know, that's Leo energy when it's really distorted. It's like, I'm more important, I'm special. You know, you should bow down and worship me. You know, that is when Leo gets completely out of hand. And that is elevating the individual above the collective. And so it's really hard. And so I actually think the nodal medicine of both Aquarius and Leo is to find a way where we have communities that honor individuals and where individuals contribute to communities. Because like, if we're honoring individuals, if all of humans are honoring particular individuals, but then those individuals aren't contributing back to the communities, there's going to be a huge issue. You know, if you have a certain group of people who are contributing more and other people who feel special that they don't have to communicate, obviously things are going to fall apart. So this is a huge issue to deal with, because it's going to pick up on any social shame, in particular if you've been raised by parents that believed you should be seen and not heard, by very special parents. This is my house and my rules, and if you don't like it, go and have your own house. If you've grown up with that kind of mentality, you'll see that actually there are these families that don't honor individuals, and so people have been scapegoated and black sheeped. However, in those houses where everybody's honored, somebody is carrying the cost of that. And so, like, where do we get that balance point? That is absolutely what we're going to be looking at over the next 18 months, whether we like it or not. So in terms of the rulers, we've got Saturn and Uranus ruling the North Node in Aquarius, and that is because Aquarius is a sign that's associated traditionally with Saturn, and modern day ruler is Uranus. And then the Sun is the ruler of Leo, and that's technically the ruler of the South Node. It's interesting because Saturn and Uranus have recently changed signs. So, Saturn is currently in Aries. Uranus is currently in the sign of Gemini. Uranus is going to be there the whole time. Uranus in Gemini is also talking about communication. So these two planets are also flavoring the North Node a little bit more. Like the last time the North Node was in Aquarius, Saturn and Uranus would have been in very different signs, but Uranus in Gemini is huge. Uranus wants to create change. It's very technological, and Gemini is the channels and route that information goes by, and it's short little bursts of information across the world. So I do imagine that social infrastructure is going to change massively during this time, and also because Pluto is also in a trine with Uranus for a lot of this time. So yeah, social infrastructure, electronic infrastructure is going to change. I think there's a whole new world being rolled out right now, whether we like it or not. And then Saturn in Aries, authority is going to be a lot more dictatorial. Saturn in Aries, is a nasty piece of work. That's not to say if you've got Saturn in Aries, you're a nasty piece of work. I'm not saying that. But like Saturn, he wears a different cloak in all the different signs. Sometimes he's a lot more benevolent. He's much more of a beautiful leader. In other places, Saturn, when he's in Aries, can be a tyrant. Now, he can also get things done, which is great. He's not pussyfooting around. He's, pulled up his socks and he's going to take action. Are we going to like that action? Maybe, maybe not. It's like somebody who's completely empowered to get the job done, and he's not going to apologize in advance. He's just going to do it and take authority. So this is a very authoritarian phase. So that's going to be interesting. That's going to affect how the North Node in Aquarius is experienced. Now, the Sun ruling the South Node, I think, is showing that there's a lot of treasures in our past. There's loads of times when we have actually shone really brightly, and we might need to connect in with our younger selves to see what we did really well and have forgotten about. The Sun should never be ignored, I don't think. The Sun is so central. It's about our vitality, our core. So the South Node, our past selves, our past lives, our infancy, all the clues that we need right now to go into this world as it's changing around us, all of that exists already. We already have our answers. Now, what this also means is in your birth chart, wherever Saturn and Uranus and the Sun are, they are stronger right now. And so, for instance, right now I've got Saturn transiting through my 6th house. I've got Uranus transiting through my 7th, going into my 8th. They are going to be, my 6th and my 8th are going to be a lot stronger felt because of where the North Node is right now. So you can definitely look at this in your own birth chart. And obviously I'm going to be doing an all 12 signs forecast for the North Node that will be released tomorrow. So that will also give you a clue. But if you would like to look at where Saturn and Uranus and the Sun are in terms of your chart and how that can help you, then just book an appointment with me. All of my details are below. It's the Calendly link that you would need. So the biggest aspects, and then I'm going to look at the Sabians and then wrap this up. So the biggest aspects of this transit then is going to be when the North Node and Pluto connect. They connect every 16 to 17 years, so it's really infrequent. They're going to be connecting on November the 30th, 2027. So it's not just yet. And they're going to be connecting at 5 Aquarius. Wherever 5 Aquarius is in your chart is going to absolutely be a meaningful point of transition for you. Pluto loves control, and the North Node is showing how we deal with control, what we've learned about control, and how we are transforming. The medicine here is we're transforming the collective, but how can we do it without sacrificing the individual? That's the big key. And that's going to be a really big key point, I think, in humanity. I see this as being a huge time, especially as it comes in. So although it says November the 30th, 2027, it's not to say it just happens on that day. It's coming in really, really slowly for about 8 months, and then it'll be passing away for 8 months after that. Now, similarly, and this happens much sooner. In fact, it's already starting. It's not quite there just yet, but it will start coming in very soon, in the next month. We've got Jupiter in a conjunction to the South Node, and this happens every 6 to 8 years. It's actually going exact with the South Node 3 times. The first one is this November, and then March, and then April of next year. But again, it's going to be coming in, not for 8 months. It will be coming in maybe for a couple of months and then fading out. I actually think it's going to roughly stay in this conjunction between November and April, and just a little bit the either side. So this is going to be really interesting, because Jupiter really gets us to look at our belief systems and our wisdom, especially our accumulated wisdom, stuff from the past and stuff that we've had confidence in, things that we felt really comfortable with. And we're going to be looking at how we can keep the wisdom and confidence that we've had, but release inflation and egoic certainty. Jupiter in Leo could be so egoic that it just becomes so sure of itself that it becomes a bully, and it can overinflate itself. And so we're going to be encouraged to remember when we were wise and confident, remember when we were really cool, and then remember those times where we pushed ourselves a little bit too much and became a complete arsehole. So this is going to this is going to show us the balance. Where does being an arsehole stop and being a cool, confident, wise person start? We're going to be playing with that balance quite a lot. So the final thing then, let's have a look at the Sabian symbols. I think the North Node in Aquarius is the most important one. As ever, I love Linda Hill's Sabian symbols. It's very easy to find. You go to sabiansymbols.com. I also recognize and recommend her book, which you can also buy from her website. You go to her website, you look up her symbols, and then you put in the degree that you're looking for, which would be 29 Aquarius. It's gone into Aquarius, it'll be at 29 degrees. And then it gets rounded up. You don't have to do that. It gets done for you. So this is the meaning for where the North Node is right now. So it says, moonlit fields, once Babylon, are blooming white. So that's interesting. So the symbol shows learning from the past, possibly great civilizations like Babylon, and taking the seeds from the past and making even greater achievements in your own time and place. Even though the grandeur of the past may be lost, changed, or damaged by war or time, the energy and power remains. The symbol reflects the permanence of the natural essence of a place, a person, an idea, or a civilization. You may feel that you're in the right place at the right time. Your best qualities are recognized and appreciated. When you're following a true path, you're able to rely on the support of the universe in its flow. Rewards coming in from efforts of past generations, ancestors surrounding, seeds of the past becoming the fruits of the present, the Middle East, the fruits of culture, artifacts. Where it goes wonky is where we're destroying ancient lands or monuments, and the old through religious beliefs or greed, projecting the sins of the world onto people or places that are foreign. So I'm sure we can already see where stuff like that is already coming up. But as ever, I'm less interested in what's going on around us, because I think, personally, it's just my honest opinion here, I think we are on a cosmic journey, and what we see in the world is a projection of what's going on with us. So I'm actually much more interested in how this symbol relates to you. Like, what does it mean to you? I love this bit here. This is the bit I'm most excited about. You may feel you're in the right place at the right time. Your best qualities are recognized and appreciated. Following a true path, you get the support of the universe and its flow. And this is the great thing. Rewards coming from efforts of past generations, ancestors surrounding. To me, what this is showing, and I feel this myself right now, is that we are coming full circle. I'm understanding now maybe why I'm existing in Gen X, maybe why I was born into Gen X, to boomer parents, and I've got, my kids are Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So I'm understanding my place in the world a little bit more, and the cost of how my ancestors have done things, and also the true role that I must play to bring up really cool kids. I'm also recognizing where some of my efforts from the past that haven't maybe seeded properly might now be an idea that I can take forwards. So I'm really seeing that. And I wonder how this appears to you, especially if you've got your sun or moon or an angle around this degree. Wow. Now, this is the South Node going into Leo. So an unsealed letter has vital and confidential information. This symbol shows a message that is or needs to be spread either by writing it down or speaking it. There can at times be a desire to reveal one's inner feelings. However, the opposite can also be true. You may feel very confronted by the thought of wearing your heart on your sleeve. However, you transmit this vital and confidential information. It needs to be done from the heart and with integrity. When this is done with the right people, when this is done, the right people can see and benefit from it. Be aware of sharing information that isn't yours to share or that breaks confidentiality with someone who trusts you. Communicating in a trusting, carefree, easy way. Ideas, thoughts, emotions exposed through being true, trusting. Shared thoughts and feelings, Dear John letters, diaries. Playing games with information. This is where it goes wonky. Concealing the purpose of deceit, blurting things out, betrayal of confidences, gossip, revealing what shouldn't be revealed. So to me, this is also a time, definitely over the next month, as the North and South Node are really playing through that 29 degree. I think things that have been hidden that need to be known are going to be released. And we're going to absolutely see these things. And we need to be very careful about what does get released and what shouldn't get released. Like what should be confidential. Like, for instance, like the power that some of these companies have in terms of like how much information should be kept about people. Like, who has a right to keep information? Like, who has a right? You know, I think we might find out about how our governments know everything about us. I think we might find out about how our governments have hacked every single messaging device. If you're listening in right now, by the way, I know what you're up to. I think we're going to find out about stuff like that. And the old adage, if you've got nothing to hide, you got nothing to worry about. That's bullshit. Like, what happens, like, where do we get to be individuals? That is absolutely exploring and honoring individuals. Going back to that idea, where is it? Communities that honor individuals. I think privacy is an important way of honoring individuals. Should we be living in ways where everything about us is revealed without us explicitly consenting to it? And I say that very pointedly because in many ways we have signed up for things without actually realizing what's going on. In fact, I think, like we've been given these massive contracts of 30 pages or whatever, knowing full well no human has got time to read through all that. That's where a lot of our privacies, our individual rights have been given away. And I think we're going to learn a lot about how things have been done against us rather than for us. And maybe we'll actually get some real information about the people that are doing it. So who knows what's coming up? I think this is going to be a very interesting time ahead. And that brings me to the end of my thoughts about the North Node in Aquarius. Now, if you found that helpful or interesting just to know about what we're laying down right now, then, thanks for watching this far. This could be helpful in you taking up your space over the next 18 months and helping the collective. But in tomorrow's episode, I will also be talking about each of the signs of the zodiac and how the Aquarian North Node and the Leo South Node is going to be working for us. So anyway, lots of love to you. Take care and catch you real soon. Bye for now.